Hi everybody and welcome to the channel. In today's video I wanted to do something a little bit different. First of all, in most of my video I showcase my makeups, but I never really show my drawings. So I wanted to do a speed paint video. I recorded myself doing a drawing of Nemesis from Resident Evil, and I use it as a backdrop to talk about things a little bit more personal. I wanted to share with you why I started doing art at the first place, what led me to start doing makeup and cosplay and drawing. And I mostly used it, or went into it, as a coping mechanism, and it really helped me to navigate through hard times. But at the same time, I feel it can be a double-edged sword sometimes. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that and some of my experiences. So one of the first reasons why I started to do art is simply because I started to get the time to do it. I think I quickly talked about it in another video, but for 10 years of my life I had two jobs at the same time. I had my full-time job as a software developer, or I was full-time studying to become a software developer. I have a bachelor degree in computer science. And I also had a part-time job when I was in the Canadian Forces Reserve. So I was a reservist, I was a signal officer, and when I left the army I was at the rank of captain. And I stayed in the army for 10 years. During all that time with the army, I never really questioned anything about my future or my destiny. When I joined and after I completed my basic courses, I was like, yeah, I will probably stay in the army for my whole life and my whole career. Like, or at least, not necessarily my whole life, but as much as I can. Like, until my health stopped me. So I was expecting at least to stay there, let's say up to my 40s, and I never really questioned it. And because I was working full-time and half-time with the reserve, I didn't have that much time to have many hobbies. Yes, I had some, mostly regarding board games or video games, but nothing really that I could really dedicate myself, like doing art and spending a lot of time on a piece, or like having social media and trying to create content. These were not the kind of things that I was able to do with my schedule. Before that, before I joined the army, in fact, I was also drawing. I was not doing makeup when I was a teenager, but at least I started drawing. But I stopped when I joined the army, not necessarily because I didn't want it to draw, but yeah, I didn't have the time, but also I kind of got discouraged. At the time I was living in a small town in the countryside, and YouTube was not a thing yet, so finding ways to learn yourself and to be self-taught at drawing was kind of hard. You could not find tutorials on YouTube, and I was mostly relying on books and just trying and experimenting. But eventually I kind of pushed that aside because I felt kind of discouraged. I was kind of good at drawing certain things. I really loved drawing characters and drawing faces, but because I couldn't draw like landscapes and other kind of stuff, and I had a hard time drawing postures, I kind of just felt discouraged and pushed that aside. But also when I started the army, I just didn't have time for that and I just forgot about it. All the time I was in the army, as I said, I was planning to stay there as long as I could, and things were going well. I don't regret joining the army. I had really great experiences, but it didn't end up the way I planned. The main thing is, in the reserve you always stay in the same unit, compared to the regular force where you could change unit pretty much every 2 or 3 years. So at my unit, I kind of grew with all the same people. Like, seeing always familiar faces, working with the same people. I mean, there's some people I've worked with my whole career. And you kind of feel comfortable, and it starts also to feel a little bit reliable and predictable. Like, you're like, well, I've been there for 9 years, so the next year won't be that different. But it didn't went well for the last year. And that's one of the reasons that led me to go into art. For the army, I was really dedicated to my job, and I was the kind of guy who was not afraid to have multiple positions at the same times to make sure that it was working for everybody. Especially at the end, I was the operation officer and the second in command of my squadron. But because the squadron commander was often not there when we had a lot of training, I had to assume the leadership of the squadron a lot of the time as well. And I was pretty happy, and it was really fulfilling as a job. I mean, having a leadership position like that is really great, and you do feel like you're good at something. It's really fulfilling. But the last year there was a lot of changes in the chain of command. We changed commander, and there was a lot of regular force members that are normally here to support us that changed as well. As I said, most people in the reserve do their career their whole life in the same unit, but we do have regular force members that are here for support. I didn't mind it that much, the chain of commanding officer, because I mean, it was somebody from the unit, and I mean, things would be really stable, and I didn't expect that much changes. But I was wrong, and I had to change my plans. Basically what happened is the regular force member really wanted to lead the unit in a very different way, and really with a more regular and infantry mentality, and they were really pushing hard for it, but they soon realized that the commander was not willing to take any action against them because he was relying on them too much. Obviously it was not all the regular force members, but some of them were more troublesome, let's say. Maybe one day I'll go more in detail about it, but... And basically what happened is that it led to harassment and intimidation, and I had to endure it. At first, I thought I was kind of alone, and I was not sure, I was not really sure what was going on, because it was a little bit unusual. I was not expecting that. I mean, in the army we talk so much about teamwork and stuff, so having people trying to sabotage you is... I mean, it's not that unexpected, but I was not expecting that at my unit, where it had been kind of alright for a while. And then later on, I noticed that people were releasing, people were quitting, and some of them that were in the unit for a long time as well. And slowly, we also started to talk with each other and realized that, yeah, this intimidation and bullying, this harassment and bullying was not something isolated, and a lot of people had to suffer for it by always the same persons. So it created a very toxic work environment that I was not really expecting. I never really planned for this. And a lot of people also with who I work decided to leave. I would say during that year, probably around between 50 and 70% of the people of experience, like surgeon, warrant officers, master warrant officers, lieutenant, captains, majors even, decided to quit because of the toxic climate. And it was a really hard time. The last year I was active, which was the training year 2017-2018, the year start in September and end in May, because with all the harassment and everything, suddenly, like, the people with who I worked that always said that my work was great, and especially like for writing orders and stuff and planning exercises, suddenly I was not good enough to do those tasks anymore. And at first I was kind of puzzled about what was going on, but I realized that it was more like a putsch, like just I was not with the right gang, and basically I got shelved. It was really hurting at first, and I think I spent so much time for that work that I burned myself up. One of the thing is, I've really felt a lot of time that even if it was a part-time job for me, they were expecting me to do as much work as the people who do that full-time. And I kind of tried as much as I can, but it felt it was never enough. So, and eventually, when I got kind of shelved because I was not with the right gang, it kind of really crushed me, and I kind of went into a burnout. I was really depressed, really anxious. I then started to have trouble sleeping. But the kind of good thing that happened with getting shelved is that I didn't have as much responsibilities that I had before. So it was an opportunity for me to focus on my courses, especially the courses to become major. So I started doing those courses, but they were mostly distance learning, so I could do them at my own pace. But at the end, basically, I just got more time to do other hobbies, and that's why suddenly I discovered makeup. As I said, I was drawing earlier, but I don't know why, but having more time, I didn't felt going back into drawing. But that's when I saw makeup that I got some interest back into art. Funnily, what kind of kindled my curiosity and my interest toward makeup is RuPaul Drag Race. I listened to it when it was like season 1 and 2, they aired on TV, and I listened to them at that time. But afterward I just kind of forgot about it. And then I rediscovered it on YouTube. There was a lot of... I've been able to watch some complete season on YouTube. But I was listening to them like not in order or anything. So eventually I had in my recommendation like the top 10 most disturbing or shocking moment of RuPaul Drag Race. And one of those moments was the infamous lip sync with Valentina. Basically, she had to do a lip sync, but she had a scarf over her covering her mouth, and RuPaul asked her to remove it, and then she did, and everyone realized that she didn't memorize the lyrics of the song. The important part of this is not Valentina, but my attention was more toward the other drag queen she was lip syncing against, which was Nina Bonina Brown. She had a makeup. It was kind of a silver skull probably with prosthetics and with spikes and everything. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. I want to learn. I wonder how she do this. The funny thing is, I often see also special effects makeup or things like that when I watch movies, but I never had this reaction. Every time I see it in movies, I'm like, oh yeah, it's done by professional, like in Hollywood, they go to a professional makeup school, and like, there's no real way you could learn that. But with drag queens, it's I mean, first of all, you don't really have a drag queen school, they learn with mentor and stuff, with drag mother as they call it. But also, there's also a big do-it-yourself side of it. Like, a lot of time they make their own costume, they learn how to do makeup by themselves, and now you have also a lot of tutorial on YouTube. I knew that a lot of RuPaul Drag Race Queen make some tutorial of their classic looks, so I searched if there was some tutorial by Nina Bonina Brown that could show me how she does that kind of makeup. I didn't find a tutorial specifically about the makeup that I wanted to replicate, but at least it gave me like the keywords to search on YouTube for tutorials. So I started to search for special effects makeup and how to build a special effects makeup kit, what is the material that you need. And eventually for Christmas I ordered my first body paint palette. It was a 12 Magic Cake palette from Ben Nye, which is water activated paint. Let's be real, it was not the best palette, but it was kind of good. I mean, it was good for a beginner. And I enjoyed it. Obviously my first makeup were really bad, but the fact that one of the first things that I did was just trying to do a skull, and it wasn't looking that bad. So it just encouraged me to go forward with that. And then I also found other channels that made more tutorial how to recreate a look. So during the holidays I spent more time trying to follow tutorials by artists such as Made You Look, Jordan Hans, and especially tutorials by Alex Faction. Eventually also I started purchasing some beauty products, especially eyeshadows and makeup brushes, to be able to recreate the look like those three artists were making. And I really enjoyed it, and it was really more like an experimental phase. At that time I was also still in the army, so that's the reason why I did it during the holidays, because I had more time. During the winter of that year I tried to do as much makeup as I could when I had an occasion, but I was not really on a schedule, like trying to do one every week. And at the end of the training year, the situation at my unit didn't improve. So I was also thinking about maybe taking a year off. And during that summer I started to do more makeup, and I had also other holidays during the summer, also with my full-time job. And that's where also I pushed it even forward a little more, and that's where, like, talking with friends, I was like, hey, you know what, with your makeup you could do also great costumes and start to do cosplay. So I decided, like, as a summer project, I started to work on my first cosplay, which was Phoenix, God of Deception from Magic the Gathering. When fall came, I decided to take that year off. And also at the same time, I decided to file 2 harassment complaints. Spoiler alert, maybe I will talk more about it in detail in another video, but I do feel that the military justice system or disciplinary system is not impartial or not looking at the facts, but really more trying to being able for the commander to decide if they want to protect someone, to give them the latitude to do so. So even if I filed like a lot of evidences and everything, it barely did anything. But I had this 1 year off, and also during summer I started my Instagram account. But it kind of started a race in my mind. The first month I took off of the army, I was already thinking about not going back, so the first month were kind of a grief. But then later on in October I went to the Comic-Con, the Quebec City Comic-Con, and presented my costume. I went to the masquerade, like, with my first costume I went to the masquerade, and I actually won a prize. And later on in November for the Black Friday I purchased my webcam and started my YouTube channel. And with that, then afterwards, I kind of used my art even more as a coping mechanism. I was also starting to get more confident about my makeup skills. And I was like, you know what? During that year I have off, I want to improve and to grow on social media up to a point where I can look back in the army and say, well, it was the right decision to leave. I'm now way more happier with doing art, and I feel more fulfilled with my art than I did with the army. And that was also a very great motivation to push more content. At the beginning, I have to say, I think I was really going hard on it by doing like 2 makeups per week, which is a lot. But later on I settled down and reduced to doing 1 makeup per week. And during that year, also a lot of great things happened to me. One of the first thing is I made a makeup. If you go back like on my first videos or first post on Instagram, you can see I did a makeup of Vic Rattlehead of Megadeth, the mascot of Megadeth, as he appear on the bottle of the beer À Tout Le Monde de Unibrew, which is quite a big brewery in Quebec. And I posted it on social media. I tagged them, and eventually, I think 3 weeks later, they shared it on their Instagram account. Which was really big for me because at that time I was still starting doing makeup. It was maybe just a year I've been doing makeup, so it was a really good deal for me, and it really encouraged me to go further. And just to see the growth I had and everything, it was really encouraging. I also enjoyed a lot making costumes, but as I said in another video, I just stopped when the COVID hit and lockdown hit and all convention got cancelled. But even still in that year off, I pushed the reflection a little bit further even. I was like, you know what, with the army, let's just imagine that I stay there. And let's say I stay there long enough, I complete my courses, I become major. I stay long enough to become lieutenant colonel and eventually become the commander of the unit. But what will it change in my life? All that to have my picture framed and displayed on a wall in a building where nobody goes? I mean, don't get me wrong, I think it's really interesting for a position, but I just consider that the effort that I had to put to that was not worth it compared to how much I felt fulfilled with my art and posting it on social media. So, what really drove me into art was kind of a way to escape the bad experiences I had in the army. And so, after the year off took an end, I had to take a decision if I go back or I leave. So, in fall 2019, I decided to leave, and officially I released in November 2019. It was such a big relief. But the funny thing is, during all that time, I also had a song in my mind, like kind of stuck. And it was really revealing of my feeling. Sometimes I have a hard time expressing my feeling, but the song I tend to listen to is a great indicator. And at that time, the song I always had in mind was There's Much More to Life Than This by Bjork, which was a song that I haven't listened to in years. But it was just so fitting for the moment I was living at that time. So after I finally released the army, I had even more time to focus on my art, and especially more focus on my YouTube videos. That's where you saw kind of an improvement of just filming myself and starting to add text also, and then starting to narrate it. And it was really a great thing. But it was a great coping mechanism, but it also had its limits. The problem that I had is I realized that I was trying so hard to convince myself that leaving the army was the best option, that I was more happy with my art, that I turned my art almost like a second job. And at that time I was not drawing, I was just doing makeup. And it started to feel like an obligation. I had to create content every week. I started to see my followers and subscribers as a quantitative way of showing how much I was happier since I left the army. I kind of had this mentality of getting revenge by success, then showing how much I could succeed outside of the army to show that I was not as worthless as they thought I was. But I kind of went overboard with it. It went well for a while, but with makeup I started to get a little fatigue in late 2020. The main reason is because I've been doing a makeup per week, and sometimes even more, for almost 3 years. So all the characters that I wanted to do when I started, I already did them. And now it was harder because I had to explore new franchises and learn new characters. And it was also really time consuming. I wanted to explore also different mediums because makeup is something that you have to do in one go. I cannot start a makeup and say, oh well, I'm tired, I'm just gonna continue tomorrow morning. I cannot sleep with my makeup on. So that's why I wanted to find another medium, and eventually I discovered drawing with markers. And on Black Friday that year I purchased a bunch of Copic Chow markers, the small ones, and I really enjoyed it. Then like in 3 months I purchased pretty much all the colors available in the stores in my city. So I went pretty intense on that as well. I was still doing makeup, but once in late February of 2021 I had to slow down because I got a gum graft, which is not something, it's not a big operation or something, but it made my face really sensitive, so I could not do makeup for that time. So instead, that's when I started to also post my drawings on my Instagram account. And I really enjoyed drawing and I wanted to do more. But the catch here is, well, first of all, also drawing was really interesting because I also thought about, well, I can start to do original creation and then later on turn them into makeup. But the thing is, with drawing, it takes way more time than doing makeup. Doing a makeup can take me around 4 hours on average, but doing a drawing, the whole process, like doing the sketch, picking the colors, and then doing the final piece can sometimes take up to 10 hours pretty easily. So, and trying to do more drawings was really time intensive as well. When in May I moved, it was not the big move. I switched from one apartment to another, but the twos were in the same apartment building on the same floor. But at that time I had, for one of the first time, to stop doing art for 1 month just to sort things out and set up my new apartment. But it felt like it was kind of art. And then I had a really hard time to go back into art, because it really started to feel more like an obligation, and as I said, it was my way to kind of prove myself how much I was succeeding and kind of showing the finger to my job with the army that didn't ended the way I expected. I'm still a little bit bitter about how it ended, even if I don't regret the choice I made to leave. But I wanted to do art because it was my coping mechanism, but for one time I could not really do it, and it really influenced me. It really hurt me in a certain way. But I just realized that my relationship to art was not necessarily healthy. It's good to use it as a coping mechanism, but it needs to stay enjoyable. But if it starts to feel like I just replaced one job with another, then how much can I really say it's a hobby? It's a liberation? So that's also why I started to slow down a little bit, because I want to spend more time, especially after lockdown. I just want to spend more time with friends and family. But I realized that I have to keep art enjoyable, meaningful, in order to truly appreciate it. If I just do it kind of in a robotic way and trying to draw pretty much anything just because I need to draw something and to push content, it's not healthy. And it's just kind of a way of numbing older problems that are still unsettled. For that, I started to go back to psychological support to try to figure those things out. But this is the danger of using art as a coping mechanism. You have to keep it healthy, but it can become unhealthy, like pretty much anything. It's good, but too much and abusing it is not good anymore. So yeah, that's a little bit how I started and what was my motivation to get back into art. We're now reaching the end of the video, so I hope you really enjoyed it. If so, please feel free to give a like and subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this and to see also cosplay effects makeup videos. I'll look in the future, maybe I'll try to push different type of videos, try to diversify it. But doing this video, like a speed drawing and talking more about personal stuff, is also something that kind of motivate me again in doing YouTube videos. Because I don't hate doing makeup tutorials, but I do feel it kind of become restrictive and a little bit repetitive sometimes. So just sharing my experiences has also helped me to gain more interest in making YouTube video, and it also helped me on a personal level to just kind of express those feelings and experiences and letting it out. If my experiences can help other people, then I just want to share it so that they don't necessarily do the same mistakes as me. So if you want, you can also follow me on Instagram. On there you can see all the pictures of my makeup and my drawings, and you can find the link in the description down below. So I hope you really enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye!